Welcome back, everybody, to the second edition of Paranormal this morning. I swear, I haven't done back-to-backs like this in years. It's I kind of miss it. It's fun. Glad you all could join me for another fun episode where we try to make the world a little more normal. As usual, it's not going to happen, but we'll still move forward on. I am being joined today by a guest that I am very excited to have on the show because I have heard his story for years, and to spread it even more is something I've been would love to do, and I got questions. But, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stephen Kubacki, PhD and Nexalist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the program.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, folks, I'm not even going to try to summarize what he's about to tell you, so I'm not. I heard about Stephen's story years ago on a couple different podcasts where they talked about different conspiracies, urban legends, and all this type of stuff. And his story is famous in the paranormal community as, and not even just paranormal, just in the mystery community, it's huge as well. So I'll let him be the one to tell you about though. So, Stephen, why don't you tell them your miraculous tale, which, as you all know, I'm from Massachusetts, so the first part of it.
Well, it's a pretty long tale, so I'm not sure exactly where to start. I guess I could start that it was a conspiracy between me and a few other people in Michigan. I went to a school called Hope College, and we conspired that I would disappear and that we would start a kind of attempt to change the world. So my disappearance was a way of cementing our organization, which we called, and this is a little odd for people to hear these days, these words, we called ourselves the Nexalist Revolutionary Front, or the NRF. Things like Revolutionary Front were common kind of phrases back in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
So the plan was I was to go out on the ice, and then I would disappear and go underground and sort of start a call to economic and political resistance to the powers that are, and try to change the world in that way by going underground, and develop a sort of a cadre of people to begin to somehow change things, you could say. And then the other people were involved in other things like politics and economics and theology. And at some point we would all get together and we would be kind of unstoppable. At least that was the thinking. So what happened to me on the ice? Well, I went out there on the ice. I was a cross-country skier, and I went skiing quite a lot on the ice in Lake Michigan. This was all part of preparation for my disappearance because I didn't want to be thought of as being alive after that. So we spent a long time me talking about carrying my passport with me and just a whole variety of things. And then once I got on the ice, I had a really kind of I might say very highly dissociative experience on the ice, where part of me left the ice. I became Nathan T. Stanfield. That was my name after I disappeared, Nathan T. Stanfield. But something happened to me on the ice where I felt I entered like another dimension and experienced beings of light and an energy shell. And this was kind of bifurcated from me leaving on the ice. So it's kind of like being in two places at the same time, though a lot of the memories of that experience didn't really come back to me until, as time advanced and I began to remember things about that experience on the ice. It was unclear, did I go under the ice? Was I in the air? It was all very kind of, but I wasn't abducted by a UFO. Okay. Not in the traditional sense. I entered a kind of interdimensional space. Which sort of fits in more with the multiverse theory and that's kind of what some kind of how I interpret what happened is in terms of a more scientific theory like the multiverse. For me, I mean, I kind of really like, that your show is called the Paranormal, the New Normal. Is that correct? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. In my opinion, I think everything is normal. I don't think paranormal is not normal. I think there's just varieties of different normality, and I think one of the things that the multiverse theory does is it, in the multiverse theory, there are infinite number of dimensions and realities and universes, and clearly we intersect. Our universe intersects with those in some way, and what we think of as paranormal experiences maybe just people entering these other universes or dimensions in some way.
Which I mean, you're not wrong. That's definitely a very ongoing theory nowadays that the multiverse is coming to it a lot now. It's not extraterrestrials anymore. Now they're ultra terrestrials. They come from another dimension, not from space always. And same with cryptids. Now they're ultra terrestrials as well because they come from other dimensions, which I'm not gonna lie. I fought that theory at first for years. Like I fought that theory as being something realistic, but over time, like it kind of just like sank in. Like okay, maybe this is starting to make sense now. Maybe it is true. And so you disappeared in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, I disappeared in
Oh,
Michigan. In Michigan, I reemerged in Massachusetts 15 months later. So after I disappeared up, and Nathan T. Stanfield went to Mexico and then had a variety of different experiences, trying to develop a kind of, again, a kind of revolutionary organization. And then reemerged in Massachusetts near Great Barrington 15 months later.
Which I know Great Barrington because that's right in the border of New York, and I used to go there. I had a friend who lived there, so I used to go there every couple of weeks, like back in 10, 15 years ago. So I actually know Great Barrington very well, and that's why when I first heard your story, I was like, "Oh, I know." I'm like, "I know Great Barrington," and I now live in Massachusetts. So that's the funny thing, because I used to live even closer to Great Barrington than I do now. But it's that was one of the big theories was either you were abducted by aliens or you were murdered and they never found the body. I mean, those were the two theories that people always brought up when they talked about your story. Multidimensional never came up even because it wasn't an idea back then. It wasn't like an idea that was commonplace.
Right.
But it makes sense in a way. So, what is a Nexalist? That's what I'm trying to.
Okay, yeah. What is a Nexalist? A Nexalist. The word Nexalism comes from a book by A.E. Van Vogt called "The Voyage of the Space Beagle." It's an old science fiction. And in this book, a particular character, Grossner, if I'm getting his name correct, is on the spaceship, and he's called a Nexalist. And a Nexalist is somebody who understands the assumptions and values and the basic methodologies and theories of all the different sciences, and also the humanities and arts and a variety, basically all of knowledge, understand. But this is not an expert in any particular content area. And when the spaceship is menaced, he is able to think outside the box because he doesn't think only, let's say a chemist only thinks in terms of a chemistry world, or a literature person only in terms of a literature world, and a physicist, etc. He can think across a variety of things and integrate them and synthesize them to come up with a solution. So in some ways, a Nexalist is sort of another way think of somebody who's kind of more of a Renaissance kind of person, who is able to move across many different disciplines and ideas and sort of kind of integrate them in unusual ways in order to solve problems.
Okay, that's I like it. It's a cool name. It really is. So when you reappeared, what was the first thing you did? Did you go reach out to family, or did you like go to start this liberation front you're trying to start? Like, what was the first thing you did when you came back?
First thing I did, I was in a very confused state. If you read in the book, I had a lot of sort of dissociative experiences while I reemerged, but I decided I would call my aunt in Great Barrington on June and talk to her first, because I didn't want to shock my parents. So I talked to her, and of course she was, delighted to hear my voice and raced to pick me up with her car and then drive me to my hometown in South Deerfield, where that's where my father lived, and that's where I saw him, and then my mother.
And I guess I should really ask this first.
Yeah. I also feigned amnesia because what I had done probably could have gotten me in trouble and my co-conspirators, and I needed to protect my co-conspirators. So I feigned amnesia because if I didn't, then their lives would have been, changed dramatically. And also, it would not enable me to move forward with my life in a different way. So that was the best way of creating a separation between, kind of my life moving forward from 1979 and what happened for the 15 months before that. And also protect my co-conspirators. So they could live the lives they wanted to, because otherwise, one of them wanted to, make a lot of money, in the financial world. And, financial world is a pretty conservative world. It'd be pretty hard to be a banker or something like that, and make any headway if somebody knew you were involved in a conspiracy to change the world. And they were involved in a conspiracy where somebody disappeared, and for 15 months, when I disappeared, they were looking for me with helicopters and divers, and it was quite the scene. And when I think about it, I still feel very, at times I feel guilty about the whole thing because it was a certain ruthlessness, and I put my family through hell. My mother never really believed I disappeared, and she was relentlessly trying to find me. Everyone else thought I was dead. Everyone else thought I went under the ice.
I mean, well, and those of us who are more, I wasn't even alive yet at this point, but those who would hear your story later, who are more of the paranormal mind, we kind of believe the alien abduction thing. We kind of thought that was possible. But, and who knows? Interdimensional does make sense. Even when I first heard this story 10, 15 years ago, I never put two and two together and thought about it. One part of you...
What I would say is that there are two stories here. There's the sort of the political economic side, this sort of revolutionary group. And then there's all these interdimensional and multiverse experiences that I had. And they kind of parallel one another, and kind of how the story unfolds and what happens to me during those 15 months.
So, I was going to ask next, actually. While one party was in Mexico, what was happening to the other part, which I assume was...
Well, that's taken me a long time to recover. I was there was communication with these with these interdimensional light beings of light in the energy shell. I felt, and this is where we get into the whole problem of language and interpretation around these experiences. If I was somebody who hadn't studied a lot about other dimensions, and there really wasn't, the multiverse was a pretty new idea, but other dimensions and realities, I might have been incredibly scared or paranoid about what was happening to me. And if I was really scared and paranoid what was happening to me, I might then project that fear all around me. And instead of seeing beings of light, I might see mean, lizard aliens or something, out to, dissect me or plant things in my body, etc. In the shamanic traditions, old tribal societies, is not unusual for people to experience these dimensions or other universes, and oftentimes in a very friendly way, where these beings in other places or entities, however you want to talk about them, might put things in their body or help them to do something. And then that wasn't seen as something as being kind of forced upon them, or as like planting electrode, whatever it is that people are, and again, these are all different interpretations of kind of what goes on. But I think who we are, our personal history, our cultural history, has a lot to do with how we interpret these experiences, how we make sense of them. A Christian might see angels or demons. Buddhists might see Buddhas or hungry ghosts. So it's, yeah.
So you believe you saw what you saw based on what your beliefs were at that point?
Yeah, I think I saw what I saw because of my personality. I wasn't scared. I was open to these things. Also, I felt a certain benevolence in it all. The communication, it's kind of hard to describe. I would say it's kind of like communicating, like some kind of combination of sound and light. Light is a wave and sound is a wave, and I think it's a way of communicating in that way through light and sound and color.
Which makes sense in a way. And did these beings ever tell you why they wanted to take you for that long?
Well, it felt as if they wanted to impart me some information that could possibly be helpful to others, to help me connect me with my other selves and other dimensions and other universes. That I believe there are infinite number of us, yous, and they're all interconnected in some ways, but we just can't access those other parts of ourselves, our other yous and other universes. But I felt that they wanted to help me, and they probably had their own agenda. I think that's something we need to think about. That these beings or entities, sometimes they've got their own thing going on. So I think sometimes what happens is we sometimes we think everything is very personal. When we have these kind of interactions, or people have interactions with these other universes and dimensions or entities. And we think it somehow has to do with us. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it may be like you stand in front of the sun and it warms you up. That energy, you can extract that energy from the sun and it warms you up. That doesn't mean the sun is interested in you. It doesn't.
No.
It cares about you. And I think, we tend to be very human centric, and we tend to be kind of think we're the centers of the universe and the centers of what's going on around us. And so sometimes we may misinterpret things as something interested in us, when in fact it may not be interested in us at all. We're just somehow accessing its energy or bathing in its energy or whatever it is. And there's, again, this tendency to anthropomorphize things. Now, I'm not saying there aren't, entities and other things out there who are specifically interested in us. But I think a lot of it is kind of impersonal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of abductions and experiences that happen with ultra-terrestrials is a lot of it's by accident. A lot of it's not meant to happen, and it's just kind of passed across in type of way. But so, what were your co-conspirators doing all this 15 months you were gone? Like, because obviously this wasn't the plan you guys had.
Well, their plan. One person was supposed to go into business and become a billionaire and amass power and wealth in that way. Another person was supposed to go into politics and become a leader and gather power that way. And the third person was supposed to. He was a theologian going to be a theologian, and his goal was to kind of not start a new religion, but move Christianity in a different direction and become powerful within the world of Christianity. So that was their job, and we called that the right arm because it was sort of what most people would think of as legitimate. That's what people do in our world. Yeah. And then left arm, which is what I represented, would go underground and try to create this army of a group of people of resistance from lower classes, middle classes, to rise up against the authoritarian structures and the injustices of the world. And at some point we would meet together. At some point we would combine our strengths and what we were doing, and then because we had both the legitimate and the so-called, we'll say the underground world, the illegitimate, they would come together and be, kind of perhaps unstoppable. Again, these are all speculative. I mean, who knows what would happen? But that was sort of the idea, because other revolutions in the past, either they were kind of underground revolutions, they began underground, like in Russia. Russia has a long history of before the 1917 revolution by Lenin. There were hundreds and hundreds of attempts to overthrow the Tsar. And so that's kind of that's one route, and the other route is people trying to amass power politically, economically, and religiously. So we thought we would combine those two, and that would make us different from kind of what's happened in the past, and that we would be successful. But in many ways, I'm glad we weren't successful, because it was, I think one way of looking at my story is it's kind of a struggle between the dark and the light. And Nathan was much more, that part of me was much more attracted to the darkness, to the power. And in many ways, I kind of like looked over the abyss. And, in order to become that kind of powerful person, I would have had to become, kind of a killer. And ultimately, I couldn't do that. And because I couldn't do that, that's sort of what made things fall apart.
I mean, yeah, and this seems like the typical type of idea that we all have in our youth. Everybody gets rebellious in their youth, and they want to overthrow the authority and become part of the solution. Which it doesn't. Most of us, like, it just phases out, or we plan something even like you guys did, and it doesn't happen. Because I'm assuming when you came back, the Liberation Front was basically dead at that point, or
the Nexalist Revolutionary Front was gone, and I was in contact with the people, the people who were involved in all this, and still am in various ways. So afterwards, one of the mistakes, lots of mistakes, a lot of errors, is that the disappearance wasn't transparent, and I believe in total transparency and not secrecy. And I think secrecy ultimately kind of undermines your own values. And so when you think you're trying to overthrow the authoritarians and the sociopaths and all, and try to bring justice to the world, and our goal was to sort of democratize everything, including corporations, really have real true redistribution of wealth, get rid of the billionaires, etc. We thought we could do that, but by being so secretive and also kind of following a path of power, you might say, we were probably ultimately going to become the very things we didn't want to become.
I was going to say, I'm sure that your co-conspirators kind of got caught up in their careers and forgot about it all pretty fast. So,
not really. I mean, everybody was on board because, my disappearance cemented us in a conspiracy. And so, everybody knew, I think the people involved were genuinely going to carry out their missions. But the problem is I couldn't carry out mine, and mine was essential that kept us all together. And once I couldn't do mine, and then that was over.
Yeah, were your co-conspirators really upset about this, or did they just kind of move on with their lives?
I think, yes, some of them were very upset about it. One particular person was incredibly angry with me. But they went on with their lives, and I did too. And I moved. I guess you say, before what kind of how I might have educated me in the way to develop this sort of revolution conspiracy was I was very focused on larger system issues like politics and economics. I spent a lot of time studying culture, the culture industry, and how it affects and controls our minds. So I was very focused on this kind of larger things. I wasn't focused on psychology. I wasn't focused on the micro. I was focused on the macro. And after I reemerged, I really shifted and moved into studying kind of the psychology and of personality, and I'm trying to understand each other. And that's why I became a therapist, to help others. I mean, my goal during the disappearance, our goal was to really help the world. That was our goal. And my life has always been one of service. And so I moved to this kind of more micro focus of looking at individuals and trying to help them and trying to understand, what motivates us to be hateful and angry and trying to amass power. Why are there sociopaths? Why do they rule the world, in a sense? And that's helped me quite a lot to understand that. And you might say that was a second phase of my life. I got a master's in linguistics and then a PhD in clinical psychology, and I've been a therapist for over 35 years. I don't know how long. Still have a small private practice. But and then the next stage, you would say, in the last 10 years, as I've been trying to combine the insights of psychology that we have to change within, but we also have to change at a systems level. They both have to happen at the same time. And if you only change things at the systems level, then you have people who are pretty messed up and have all kinds of, unworked through issues that then can lead to the change, can lead then to, to things becoming the way they were, because you inside hadn't changed very much. On the other hand, you need to work things at a larger macro level, because we know, psychotherapy, it's had a very, I think, positive effect on the world, but the craziness of the world still continues at this larger macro level. We see it clear in our corporations and government, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean it. I agree. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people have this idea of that they could change the world, and that, I mean, the idea of getting rid of the 1% and redispersing wealth is not. It's not a new idea. It's an idea that has been around forever, and it's just it. Even if someone managed to achieve that, there would be another 1% that would rise up next. You're never going. The cycle can't be broken. It's not going to be broken. There's always going to be those who rise up.
This is a problem, but you can create. One of the things I've been working on, looking at economics, and there's a general tendency for everything to accumulate, to centralize. Money centralizes. Money accumulates. If you look at the effects of Brownian motion in physics is where, if you put a bunch of random atoms and molecules in a vacuum, they will still begin to coalesce. This is why we have galaxies, because things accumulate. This is why we have cities. Things that people accumulate in various areas, and money accumulates too, and power accumulates. And so this is always going to be happening. And then we just need to develop other checks and balances in order to, instead of things being centralized, money being centralized in particular individuals or organizations or governments, that is more decentralized and dispersed. And that's a lot more difficult.
It is. I mean, it's. I mean, there's always going to be people who are good financially with money and can find ways to make it and to keep it. And there's always going to be those group of people who can't manage. Even if they're handed $1 million, they would spend it in a couple months' time and be back to where they are. It's people. It's in us. It's just part of our build. It's part of our design to how we deal with money. It's part of our design. It's part. You could learn it. You could learn to be a certain way, but it's hard. Some people are just made to spend.
Well, no, that's true. There are some people who try to fill their emptiness inside by spending and getting commodities all the time, and that's part of our commodity culture. But I think people generally, most of us are very, you might say, altruistic. We really care. We're very social creatures, and we really go out of our ways to take care of others and to put the extra effort in. I have a lot of clients who work in very, big corporations like Microsoft and Amazon. And some of these people are working 80, 90 hours a week, and why do they do it? It's not fairly compensated. That's for sure. They do it because they're oriented to take care of and help others, to really be part of the team. And in many ways, we are altruistic. I think the problem is that there's a certain percentage of the population that is more sociopathic, and sociopaths have no empathy. There is no altruism. They just manipulate and control the people who are caring and who are compassionate, who are altruistic. And I think it's very hard for most people to become zillionaires, because in order to do so, you got to be pretty ruthless. You got to,
you have to be. I mean,
people who climb up the corporate ladder, usually by the time they get to the top, they're usually not nice people. Okay, that's how they got there, and and it becomes only about power and money, and there isn't this concern for others. So I think the key is for the people who do, the 95% of the population, is to realize that we are caring and loving and altruistic. And social, and not to allow ourselves to be controlled by this other smaller percent.
I mean, yeah, those who are social. You're right. This world is run by sociopaths and narcissists and everything else. But there's advantage to being like that too, though. It's not a good thing, but there's an advantage to being like that, because you can accomplish more because you don't care. People like you and I who care about other people, we don't want to step on people to get where we need to go. And
I don't know. I think we can still be very assertive and creative without stepping on others. People can get together and do all kinds of things. That doesn't mean that there needs to be, a dictator or a king or some, CEO at the top. People can get together and manage their own stuff. Yeah, we need hierarchy very clearly, and there needs to be, I make a difference between something being authoritarian and something being authoritative. We need people who are authoritative and good leaders. We need hierarchy. That's just, that's the only way social organizations exist. But we can have, we can create meritocracy and accountability so that, people who are at the top are accountable and to the people at the bottom, and the people at the bottom can, get rid of them or get them to change in some way.
Which I mean, you're not wrong. There are ways to do it. It's just, I mean, I was actually just talking about this on my last show.
Sure.
It's basically the fact that, I mean, us as a planet, we are not, we're more concerned about what's going on locally than globally. We're not like the people of this world and if we're not there, we're not going to be there for a long time because there's too much strife in local communities, in local cities and local states, and in your own country to care about what's happening in the other side of the world. And I mean, there's some belief that this is forced and this is made to keep us from becoming our better selves, our greater selves, from awakening even. But I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of group behind it all. I really wouldn't. I mean, this day and age, that wouldn't surprise me. But I don't know. It's a scary world we live in, and we're trying to figure out. People are still trying to figure out the best way to live in it and survive, let alone actually help others. I mean, it's hard to help others when you're starving, when you're dying of thirst. Like, it's hard to help others.
Well, I think that's somewhat true, but oftentimes when you go into poor communities, it's my experience that people are the most generous, are the most caring, take one another. I mean, I don't know. I think usually, there's some studies that show the wealthier people get, the less generous they become, the less concerned for others they become, the more divorced they become from humanity. So I don't know. On the other hand, a lot of people bought into the system. Everybody wants to be a zillionaire. Everybody wants to have this or that, and and that's part of the brainwashing that goes on in the commodity culture.
Exactly. I mean, the idea of keeping up with the Jonases, like the idea that because your neighbor has it, you have to have it. Like it was an idea that started back in the 50s, basically, and to this day, it's even worse because now with all these people on YouTube and whatnot, oh, I got this new thing from Amazon today. You have to get this, and then every kid wants it. A lot of adults want it, and it's just like, what? I'm like, why are we trying to make ourselves so commercialized? Like,
well, yeah, and that commercialization, then we're destroying our planet. I mean, this has been talked about by many people in many different books, but we are destroying our planet through this, focus on greed and having everything we want, and without really looking at the implications of what it's doing to the planet. I mean, it's unsustainable in the long run. Our economic system is unsustainable. Our country is bankrupt. Most of the countries in the world are bankrupt. We live in a fictitious kind of economic system. One of the jokes I tell people is if you get 200 economists together, they have 200 different predictions, and one of them statistically is going to be right, and that person gets the Nobel Prize. I'm not trying to put down people who got the Nobel Prize, but this is the problem with economics, is that it's not a science. It's hard to predict history.
And it really is.
It's not much better than it's at the most good for very short term, looking at short term things, but long term things, it's useless.
It really is. I mean, no one could have predicted 100 years ago where we'd be today. Nobody could predict it. Yeah. Nobody could predict it, and we can't predict where we're going to be 100 years from now. No. I mean, what are your since you had this experience with light beings, I'm sure you fully believe there are other civilized societies out there besides humans.
Oh yeah. There are definitely other civilized societies and other universes or other planets, and some are, there are definitely extraterrestrials, in our universe. And there are, extraterrestrial, what I call super extraterrestrials in other dimensions and realities that people then think of as gods or powerful entities of various sorts, and how they operate and how we connect with them is different. I wanted to say one thing is, and this is more the scientist in me. I should, before I even get into that, I should say, I'm a mathematician, have also written another book called the Metamathematics of Existence, and we developed two theorems. One's called the theorem of totality, that's based on Gödel's work. He was a contemporary of Einstein. And we prove mathematically is in order for anything to exist, everything imaginable and unimaginable must exist. It's called the theorem of, so it kind of supports the multiverse from a mathematic perspective.
Yeah, I've heard of that theory.
Yeah. The other theorem is the theorem of boundary conditions. And in order for anything to exist, it must have boundaries and limitations. And this is the one thing we need to think about is, there's this kind of interaction between the infinite possibilities and then the finiteness we live in and the limitations we live in. And our universe isn't a fantasy novel. We don't have pigs flying in the air and ghosts, witches going here and there. It's not, maybe on TV that happens, but our world doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean there aren't things happening that from these other dimensions and universes that interact with ours that we have difficulty explaining. But there is a rule boundedness to the universe, though these rules can be bent and sometimes broken. And and eventually, who knows, maybe like in Star Trek, we'll be able to go faster than the speed of light, and other things like that.
Exactly. I mean, it's both theories they have to live side by side. They have to.
Yes.
Because if things don't have boundaries, they have unlimited potential, and that's not good for anything. If you have unlimited potential, because then we see we've seen in all the sci-fi shows, Star Trek included, what happens when beings have unlimited potential and how they destroy their own societies. So,
well, something going on economically, politically like that, maybe, I don't know. I'm just, I might be off base with that. That's going on in the world. But.
I mean, it's slowly happening, and I truly believe that we are on the verge of another a great spiritual awakening, bigger than anyone before, and that it's going to change the way people think in our world.
Yeah, I hope so. I agree with you. I think, I think we need to take spirituality and modernize it, let go of some of the things that are clearly wrong, like, the earth was created in 7 days. That there's no validity to that, maybe metaphorically, but we need to modernize. And I think the multiverse is the way to do it, because it's based in science. It's based in quantum theory. It's where we get into things like quantum consciousness, and quantum consciousness is a state where we can then access these other universes and dimensions. We're doing it all the time. A lot of times we don't even know it, but dreams clearly get us into a state of quantum consciousness. And if we just digress here a little bit, when in quantum theory, there's a possibility an electron could be anywhere in the universe. It has infinite possibilities, and that's called a state of coherence. And when it interacts with lots of things, has more relationships, we kind of know where it is. So if we see a rock, we see all these molecules and atoms. The rock stays the same as a rock over time. It's not here or there or everywhere. But when we can simplify the mind, like in dreaming, we let go of established thinking, the mind gets simpler. We get into this place of quantum consciousness, where then we can access these other universes through dreams, and get information and see things that they have no foundation in our world, or there's no scientific explanation for it. And we do this all the time. And and meditation, prayer, other things that help simplify the thinking we have and quiet the mind. And so reduce the connections and the established connections, and open us up to these other infinite possibilities. Though how we interpret them is based on our, on our finite interpretation, on our personalities and our personal history, et cetera, which create limitations.
Exactly. I mean, quantum physics in the morning. You're getting me into something here. But
yeah, I tried. It's a very crazy play. I mean, we think about quantum entanglement. You could have an electron that has a spin in one place, whatever. I'm not getting into what spin is, and you have an electron could be on the opposite side of the universe. And when this electron changes, what it does, that the other electron changes too automatically. It defies how we think of time, because in a sense there is no time between these two electrons, even though they are zillions and zillions of miles apart.
Exactly. I mean, it's and to get rid of time, you're going to mess a lot of humans up if you tell them that time doesn't exist. You're going to mess a lot of humans up.
It does. I mean, we do get older, we die. One of the things I think about is that there's a belief in reincarnation, and I think it's a way of interpreting kind of the infinite us's in many different timelines and realities. And I think what happens is, at this sort of state of quantum consciousness, or we are connected with all these other parts of ourselves. And so what we think of as reincarnation is just us becoming aware of another self, another timeline, another universe, and then we're reincarnated, but we're not really reincarnated. All these selves have existed all at the same time. Does that make any sense?
It does, because I mean, I talked about this with previous guests, and because they had this ability where they could step into what they basically call the mirror room, and they could see all of their alternate lives, not past lives, but all their alternate lives happening at once in like different TV screens almost.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're talking about. Is that, I mean,
I mean, to what degree people can do that, it takes training, and this is where training in certain I call them methods of I call it constructive dissociation. Things like meditation, prayer, visualization, shamanic journeying, even psychedelics. These are all ways to access quantum consciousness. And we do it through kind of being in two places at the same time, what I call constructive dissociation, which is very different from negative dissociation. We think of negative, we think of post-traumatic stress disorder. We think of something very maladaptive when we think of, but we're constantly dissociating. People drive from one place to the next. They can't remember how they got there. Dreaming is a form of dissociation, meditation. We're all entering other states of consciousness and dissociation. And one of the things I've been kind of working on is trying to be in two places at the same time. So like, for example, when I'm hiking, I can be hiking, I'm here. At the same time, I can be somewhere else, in some other dimension or universe at the same time, and be experiencing things there. And I think it's a training to be able to do this. And again, there's a lot of ancient methods that help people do this. The problem is the explanations sometimes seem kind of strange or weird, because ours, the world, I think the major paradigm of our world now is science. So I think that's the one to go with.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, it's and you're right. All these different abilities or studies that people go on in the paranormal field they take a lot of training to master. I've talked to a lot of masters of them, and they spent 10, 15 years learning how to do what they do and mastering the craft. I mean, right. Anybody can do it if they try hard enough, and if they have if they're guided on how to do it correctly. But you're not going to be a master of it anytime soon. You have to work at it. I know people that can remote view. I know people that can go to alternate dimensions into their alternate lives, and it took them years to master it. So it's like anything in this world. You can't be an accountant and master it overnight. You're not going to be good at it. It takes you a few years to get good at doing taxes and knowing exactly what to put in every box. So I mean,
everything takes training. I agree. But people do have spontaneous. We look at miraculous healings. People get trained to to do miraculous healings, and one of the problem is how predictable is that and reliable. But there are lots of people who have miraculous healings from cancer and all kinds of things, or do miraculous things that seem kind of out of the blue without any training. I think that's what kind of befuddles everything. Sometimes there's training and people get better at it, and sometimes some people without training are pretty good at whatever they do. It's kind of, that's what makes the whole field so difficult to understand and study, in a way that you can have prediction and reliability.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely destiny, and there's definitely predetermination of fate, because people are born to be good at things, and they end up mastering those things before they're even old enough to do them.
That's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just part of life. But so, from all your experiences, what would you say is the thing people need to know the most? The thing people need to realize?
From all my experiences, I think that what people need to realize is that that we are part of a larger multiverse. And if we think of ourselves as a part of a larger multiverse with many dimensions and universes, that then supports the idea of diversity and tolerance, that there's all these universes and all us, and this sense of when we accept them, the universe, you might say the multiverse theory, if we look at it in terms of human behavior, models love, models connectedness. What is love but to connect and to accept and to be tolerant and to be caring? And the multiverse in itself is kind of like that. It's so infinite that all the connections lead to this, I think, this sense of joyfulness and caring. And so I think the caring is out there, and the love. I think that's where we need to focus on, and the trust. And trusting one another. I think it's very hard to trust. It's very difficult because, but we do. We do. Again, our world wouldn't work without trust. I mean, who's going to, without trust, the whole system would fall apart. Even criminal organizations have trust.
Without, you have to.
Yeah, without they fall apart. We are social creatures, and there's trust. And I mean, there are people who in criminal organizations willing to die for the Don or the mafia leader, willingly and gladly to do that. I mean, that's how we're programmed biologically, most of us. And then there are people, like I said, who are more sociopathic, who really just know how to use people. There's no loving, there's no caring, there's no empathy.
Yeah, which exactly, people need to learn to trust, and people need to learn. People need to learn how to get along. That's the basic message I get.
In terms of like younger people, I would say that we have infinite possibilities. That's really my message. Is all people that we can do anything. There are infinite possibilities for all of us. We just need to understand how to get there, what it is that we're really interested in, and develop step by step or a program to realize them, but also to understand our limitations. I think it's both to be able to be, both connected with our finite self and our infinite self. And then we can probably do incredible things. And people do incredible things. I mean, you look at the arts and literature and science and et cetera. It's just amazing what humans can do. Of course, it's amazing how deplorable humans can be, killing one another and chopping each other in pieces. I mean, it's just, it's still happens in the world.
It does. And, well, if people want to learn more about all this, why don't you tell them about your two books and where they can find your books?
Yeah. The book about my disappearance is called The Disappearance, Conspiracy, Revolution, Revelation, ... The Extraordinary, The Extraordinary Disappearance of Stephen Kubacki, in parentheses, after 45 years of silence. That's one book. And the other book is The Metamathematics of Existence. And they're both, you can get them on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever. You can also look at my website, StephenKubacki.com. And there I talk about those books, and I also talk about things I'm writing now. I'm almost finished a book, what I call The Multiverse Guides Humanity, and that's talked about on my website, StephenKubacki.com, and other books I'm working on economics and other things.
Well, and I want to thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your story and sharing your lessons that you've learned in life. It's been a fun conversation. I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you.
Got to talk about the multiverse in 2 episodes today in a row. I freaking love it.
Well, it's big, I guess. I don't know.
It's a very vivid topic. folks, please go check out Steven's books and go check out his site. A lot of you I know are into this stuff, so go check it out. And you all know where you can find me. Check the outro if you don't. I will be back tomorrow with 2 more episodes in the morning because I'm crazy apparently. But
Good for you.
enjoy the rest of your Saturday, everybody. I got things to do and places to be, so I will catch you all tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.